a lot of altcoiners will like try to say like, no way, Ethereum's leading Bitcoin. I'm like, yeah, if Bitcoin was downtrending, Ethereum would be following it. You just
Yeah, and guess what? During most of this correlated time between Bitcoin and SPY or SPX, whatever, in the last few months, Bitcoin's been leading. The Bitcoin move comes before the stock move. Bitcoin bottomed 11 days before the stock market, and by the time the stock market bottomed, that's why I kind of laugh at it. But, it was March 12th, obviously, it was the day Bitcoin bottomed. I think the SPX bottomed on like March 23rd or something. And by then, Bitcoin was back up, 65, 70% from the bottom. That's not correlated. That's the thing is like, you look at these sort of general trends, they diverge.
in the macro picture, the same way that the altcoins can only move when Bitcoin is in a good position, I feel like Bitcoin can only move up when we haven't had a complete pop of the stock market. And because the central banks are printing trillions and propping up stocks, so Bitcoin has been moving up as well. And the reason why I think that is because the profile of the investor has totally changed from pre-2017 to now. Now there's like way more people from Wall Street and institutional investors and whatever in. So they're more exposed to the other markets.
That's a fair assessment.
Question, what do you think changes to break that pattern if the stock market does collapse, if this money printing doesn't work, if we do see bad economic times and a depression happen? I'm of the opinion to think that Bitcoin will eventually decouple and actually inversely correlate, but I have no idea if that's going to happen or not. You know what I mean? Like, what do you think? Do you think that's possible or not possible or what?
It's possible. I mean, you can't believe in Bitcoin and believe it's not possible, right?
But you're more like tuned into the macro markets than most people in crypto. So
I don't think a collapse is coming. Even if a depression comes, I don't think it's a collapse, right? So yet again, I think it will be a very large dip on the way that it's always continued up. They can print dollars almost infinitely, and people need them. The dollar is the safe haven asset in this world, not gold, not Bitcoin, not silver, not stocks, not anything else. Everyone around the world is hoarding dollars because it is the global currency, right? So for it to change, that has to change, in my opinion. So it's more about the dollar and about money than it is about what the stock market does. So that could happen. I mean, we've seen it happen in micro environments. Like you look at Venezuela. I mean, it took Venezuela 1 year to hyperinflate, right? Where it was to the point, I mean, it's like Germany in the 1920s, like to the point where it's literally like suitcases of money to buy bread. But none of those assets or currencies were ever the asset or currency, right? So for that to happen to the dollar, everything everywhere has to collapse. Like Venezuela can collapse, and the collapse of the bolivar or whatever does not affect anyone outside of Venezuela, really. I mean, maybe it affects the oil market in a certain way or whatever, but you know what I mean. A full-on dollar collapse is a collapse of, money everywhere. And yes, I think then Bitcoin would shine. I think there's also a differentiation between the price of Bitcoin and the value of Bitcoin to some degree, like sort of spitballing here, but like regardless of the price of Bitcoin in Venezuela, which is a hyperinflationary environment, Bitcoin is saving people's lives. It's sustaining families and very small amounts of it because it has actual value. And that's true if Bitcoin is $20,000 or $1,000 because it is the hard money that you talked about. It's a real asset that they can use and their money is worthless. So in that environment, even if stocks dropped and the price of Bitcoin dropped, if Bitcoin was actually the way that you transacted because you couldn't use a bank or you couldn't use your money, then Bitcoin would have tremendous value, even if they said it was only worth $1,000 Bitcoin, right? So I think there is a differentiation between value and price that we've seen in these other markets that we just haven't seen yet here. But I just can't cheer for this like global meltdown that's going to be miserable for 90%, more of the people on the planet just so that like my Bitcoin holdings will be proven useful. Like I said, I'm an optimist. I'm a kind of a positive person. The path for Bitcoin is really a brutal one. So I still view it as a hedge, not necessarily the future of money. I would love for it to happen together. I would love for all the markets to rise, sort of as you said. I would love for it to do it in a way where it was truly a free market and not cronyism. That's not going to happen. But the decoupling scenario requires a whole lot of pain for a whole lot of people, in my opinion.
I was hoping that it would be like Bernie would get the nomination and then
Well, that was never going to happen.
yeah, I know. I'm hoping.
Same cronyism was preventing that's preventing stocks from going down to some degree, right?
And I was just hoping that there would be some real challenge to the corporatists, lobbyists, and like the cronyism that's happening, because it is a. I don't think about Bitcoin in that equation anymore. I more and more think about it as it just is so immoral that the entire generation of the last two like generations, like millennials and Gen Zs now, we're just basically debt slaves to these central banks, and they literally print the money from nothing and then charge us 20% interest on it. They go and they get you predatory loaned to as a child, basically, like a immature kid that just wants to party. Like, here's some credit cards, 10% interest. It's no bad. Go get yourself a new car, buy a house. So you get sucked into debt, and then everybody, like the average person, has less than $400 in their bank account. They're like a couple of paychecks away from bankruptcy, and they're paying the most high interest in history, while the wealth gap gets worse and the Gini coefficient of dollars keeps increasing, like getting worse.
And you're paying 20% interest on your credit card while you're making 0% interest on your money.
Yeah, and they're making the money. Like, they literally make the money, and they do not, like, 99.9% of the people. I don't like to say 1% to 99% because Elon Musk is part of the 99.9%. He doesn't have a money printer. He had to like amass his wealth with capitalism. And even though like him and Jeff Bezos and Bill Gates, like they used capitalism, free market capitalism, to amass their significant wealth, I admire that. But for some central banker who has shares in the Federal Reserve, like Chicago Bank or something like that, or the debt fund that manages a pension for one of the states or whatever, and they're getting like millions in bonuses. That's not capitalism.
But the United States, we do that to our people. They do it around the world. It's not just us, but like that's also something that the United States is uniquely talented at doing to other countries and doing to other places in the world throughout history, using the IMF and the World Bank. And the United States is the master of finding a way to give someone a loan that they'll never be able to pay back, whether it's a country or an individual. And that's something, we'll send the CIA in to change the world leader and then give that dude a loan that his country can never pay back. And then that country is permanently indebted to the United States and never out from under our thumb. And I mean, it's our playbook, right?
So when we're talking about currencies and US is the reserve currency and everybody wants dollars, it's totally true, but there's also this global game theory war, currency war happening between Russia and China and the US. And like Russia and China don't want the dollar to be the reserve currency anymore, so they're trying to price oil and gold, or like make a gold backed currency, or just not use US dollars as much as they can. And then that's why the US invaded Libya, like Clinton and Biden and Obama and them went in and killed Gaddafi, because he wanted to make an African currency. He wanted to unite Africa and have the African petro currency, which would have been a gold backed currency that they used to settle oil and stuff. And then they went in and bombed him and his grandkids and his kids and everything. Yeah. But with the way that China has been recently, I've been noticing, watching some Real Vision videos and stuff, the way that China's been doing it. Oh, and there's this really good book by General Spalding that recently I read. It was Stealth War, I think it's called. China goes into countries, invests US dollars. So they get US dollars invested in this country. They're using US dollars to get ownership or whatever, control of Bolivia's lithium reserves or something like that. And then rather than what the CIA and the US used to do, which is just kind of like go put the countries in debt, China's been doing it as an investment scheme, but they're doing it in a smart currency war way because they're using US dollars instead of their currency. And they attracted all this investment from US companies, Canadian companies, companies all over the world to go into China, but they operate two different currencies, basically. They operate what they have internally and what they tell the rest of the world. So US has gone into crazy debt, like $20 trillion in the last like 15 years or so of printing. And
Amazing, because we had a surplus going into this millennium, right?
but China's probably, at least in that's what General Spalding says in Stealth War, and Kyle Bass at Real Vision talks about this too. But China's probably printed 40 trillion in the same time, because they only report that their debt is maybe like 15 or 20 trillion. They lie about everything. The CPP, the Communist Party, lies about everything.
There are benefits to socialism, I guess, is that you don't have to tell anybody the truth. You don't have to tell them how many people are dying from a disease. You don't have to tell them how much money you're printing.
Nobody's actually able to get their money back out. When they make profits in China, they can't take it back to the US. It's locked. Like the US dollars are almost like a shitcoin. They can't take it out. It's Chinese US dollars now. So you can't take it out. So there may be a situation where maybe the US dollar does lose its reserve status. I mean, it's unlikely, but there is a war happening, a currency war.
Why not? Oh, it certainly could happen. But in that situation, it's not Bitcoin that replaces it, right? It's like a similar evil. So, I mean, I would say that it's pretty clear that the United States is on the decline, or at least that there's significant competition for, superpower status.
What does the average person do in that scenario? Like, get yourself some Bitcoin because, like what else is going to go up 20x, 100x potentially in your lifetime?
It's very hard to be an average person in the United States. I think anywhere in the world, honestly. Where is it better? I don't even know. So, but I think it's very hard. And, millennials obviously get sort of a bad rap for being lazy and living in their parents' basement and all those things. But it comes back to what you said, which is that they're not living in the same world as the older generations were, where it was easier to just put away money in a bank account and watch it grow. And you had a job and you worked there for 50 years and they gave you a pension and retirement and they matched your retirement investments. That's not going to exist. Like we're in a gig economy world where nobody's going to pay for your health insurance and nobody's going to, invest in your retirement for you. But the onus is on you. And at the end of the day, you need to take that responsibility. If that means working a side job or getting a hustle on the internet or one of those things, there are more opportunities now to make money than ever before. It's the flip side of that coin. Yes, you don't get to have that job stability forever, but you can, if you're a real hustler, like have 5 streams of income now pretty easily if you try. I'm not saying you'll become rich doing it, but the problem is that money is not going to grow as easily.